Hello everyone. So we've talked about the graphs of parabolas, but now I want to go into how to write an equation for a parabola. So remember that there's two different types. If it's a horizontal parabola, so that means left and right, your equation is going to start with y minus k squared and then end with equals 4p x minus h. If it is a vertical parabola, so that's up and down, it will be x minus h squared equals 4p y minus k. Few things to remember here. HK, so the numbers that are inside the parentheses, that is going to be the center, or I'm sorry, the vertex of your parabola. Okay, another thing to think about is that P, so this number outside of the parentheses, that coefficient, is the distance from the vertex to the focus, or from the vertex to the directrix. It's the same distance either way. It's plus or minus. So it kind of depends on what they give you. Okay, and one more thing to think about. So horizontal means side to side. So that means that there's two different directions. Either it can go left or it can go right. So how do you know which? When P is less than 0, so that's negative numbers, it is going to open to the left. When P is greater than 0, so positive numbers, it's going to open to the right. So with vertical, kind of have to think of the same thing. There's two different directions. Either it can go up or it can go down. So when P is negative, so less than 0, it's going to open down. And if it opens up, that means that P is greater than 0. It's a positive number. Okay, so keeping all of this in mind, let's start looking at what we have here. So our first one is this graph here. Now I want to write an equation for this graph. It's a little bit easier to see when we have some color, so I'm going to put some blue on it. Okay. So one of the most obvious things to see is, what direction is this opening up? Well, it's vertical, it's opening up specifically. So vertical parabola, it's going up. Okay, now let's find our vertex. So they were nice here and they actually put a point right at our vertex. So what coordinate is that? So if this is the origin here, 1, 2, 3, negative 4, 1, 2, 3, negative 3. So that is going to be our H and K. Okay, now I want to find P. Now remember, P is the distance from the vertex either to the focus or to the directrix. In this specific example, they gave us the directrix, they gave us the sign. So we're going to count how far it is right here. That would be P. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, because this is opening up, I know that P needs to be positive, so that worked out for us pretty good. Okay, so now I think we have everything we need to write this equation. Okay, so for vertical parabolas, let me go up here really quickly. We need to start with x first. So we're going to follow this format. X minus h squared equals 4p y minus k. In fact, let's do that now. We're going to need 4p. So 7 times 4 is 28. Okay, so starting with x. It was x minus h. Our h was negative 4, so that's actually going to be a plus sign. Squared equals 4p, which we said was 28, parentheses y minus h. Again, that's going to turn into a plus sign. So that's the equation of this parabola. Okay, let's look at another graph. So here's my next one. So this time, it's opening sideways. So this is going to be a horizontal parabola. And specifically, if you look at the direction of the opening, it's opening this direction. So it's opening towards the right. Okay, let's find our vertex. Right here. So I'm going to count. If this is my origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -5, -2. That is H and K. Next, I want to find P. So remember, P is the distance from the vertex to the focus. So they gave us the focus this time. See that point in the inside? So it's literally only 1. That's our P. And since I know the equation calls for 4P, I'm going to go ahead and get that. That would be 4. Now just be careful with the sign of your P. We are opening towards the right. So that means that P needs to be positive. So we can leave these the way they are. Now that I have everything, I can write my equation. So let me just take a look really quick. For horizontal, we're going to start with y minus k squared and then continue from there. So y minus k. K was -2, so we're going to change that to a plus sign. Squared equals 4p, which is 4. X minus -5, so plus sign. And that's the equation for this graph. Okay, so now I want to look at one where I don't have a graph. They're just going to tell me 2 of the important points. So here they gave us the vertex and the focus. So vertex already is HK, so we're good there. But we need to find P. P is the distance, or let me write it this way. The distance from vertex to focus. That would give me P. So if you look at these points here, the y values are staying the same, so the y value is not going to change the distance. What's going to help me find distance is the x values. So how much would it take to get from -7 to -10? That's 3 units. So that means that 4p, I'm just going to multiply that by 4, is 12. Okay, but be very careful because there's a chance that this was supposed to be negative. How would we know which one it's supposed to be? So let's test this out. I need to know which way this is opening. Is it horizontal? Is it vertical? What is it? So honestly, I'm just going to kind of picture this in my mind. So I'm going to draw it out what I'm doing. If this was my coordinate plane, my vertex is at -7, -1. I'm going to put V for vertex. Okay, then it says that the focus is at -10, -1. So I would have to go a little bit farther out, and then that would be the focus. If you remember your vocabulary, the focus is always inside of the parabola. So that means that my parabola has to be opening this way because the focus has to be inside of it. So, I mean, just from the picture right there, it is opening to the left. So left means that it's a horizontal, so we're going to have to use the equation for horizontal parabolas. But specifically because it's left, P has to be negative, so I'm going to go back and make these negative. So 4P would be -12. Okay, so now I'm going to write my equation. For horizontal, we always start with y plus k squared. I just want to double check. Yeah, y minus k squared. So y minus k is -1, so this will be a +1, squared equals our 4p is -12, parentheses x minus h, so +7. There's our equation for a parabola that has a vertex at -7 and a focus at -10. Alrighty, and one more. This time they give us the vertex is at 1, -1, so that's our h and k, but the directrix is at y equals 3/2. Okay, so I did the other one in the opposite order. This time I kind of want to find out the direction first. Okay, so I'm going to draw my thinking here. So there's my coordinate plane. Vertex is at 1, -1. So 1, -1, about right there. Put a V next to it for vertex. The directrix is at y equals 3/2. 3/2, that's like +1.5. It's y. So that's a horizontal line. So I'm going to find y equals 3/2. So if this is 1, 1.5 is about right there. And it's the directrix, so it's not a point, it's a line. So D for directrix. So when you think of your vocabulary, the directrix is always outside of the parabola. It's on the opposite side of the focus. So whatever this parabola looks like, I don't know how wide or skinny it's going to be, but I do know that it's going to open down. So this is a vertical parabola. And specifically, it's opening down. Okay, so now if I want to find P, that's the distance from vertex to directrix to okay, so this is a y value. So we're only really going to look at the y. So how much would it take to get from -1 to +3/2? So it is going to be a fraction. This is going to be 5/2. P is 5/2. Or you can think of this as 2.5, but it has to be negative. Because we are opening down, P has to be negative. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate 4P because that's what we need for our equation. So that would be -10. So now I think I have everything I need. I can write my equation. So for a vertical parabola, let's take a look. We have to start with the x minus h squared. So I would have x minus h is 1 squared equals 4p, so that's our -10, y minus k. So this is going to turn to a plus sign. All right, and that's the equation of the parabola with the given vertex and directrix.